They find the first sign just after dawn. A single footprint, deep in the red mud. Careful, deliberate. Not from their own men. The Viet Cong tracker crouches low. His rifle lies across his knees. He runs rough fingers just above the heel mark without touching it. The soil is still damp from night rain. Whoever stepped here knew that, spread their weight, rolled the edge of the boot in, not down. Almost no splash. "These are not Americans," he murmurs. His assistant leans closer. They have followed many kinds of trails in this province. American infantry, South Vietnamese regional forces, local militias. Most of them move through the jungle like visitors. They break branches, they leave cigarettes, they talk. This trail is different. No broken branches higher than a man's knee. No bent saplings, no scuffed bark at shoulder height where weapons brushed by. A path exists, but only if you know how to see it. The tracker moves ahead, reading. The Australians came through in single file, 4, maybe 5 men. Heavy packs, but balanced. They used roots as stepping stones, avoided soft patches. Every few meters, their sign almost vanishes entirely. He tastes a pinch of damp earth from the edge of the print, a habit formed years ago against the French. Warm, no grit, no crust, recent. Less than 2 hours, he says. They are close. The counter-tracking team pushes on, 5 men, chosen for their eyes, their patience, their calm. Their task is simple to write, hard to do. Find the Australian SAS patrol that has been haunting this sector. Destroy them. Restore confidence. For 3 hours they follow the faint thread through the jungle. Footprints widen, then narrow. Sometimes disappear where the enemy has stepped on rocks, roots, fallen logs. The Australians are ghosts, but even ghosts must touch the ground. Then the tracker sees it. A heel mark, but wrong. The print points forward, but the pressure pattern is reversed. Weight falls on what should be the trailing edge. The soil is pinched, not pushed. The boot came from the opposite direction. His stomach tightens. "They have turned," he whispers. The realization spreads through the team like cold water. For hours they have believed they are behind the Australians, closing in. Now they understand the truth. The enemy knows. The men they hunt have already swung around. Somewhere in the green, the Australians are no longer a trail ahead. They are a presence behind. The fear is not that the enemy is in front of you. It is the moment you understand they may already be behind you. The counter-tracking team halts. Weapons rise, eyes probe the curtain of leaves that suddenly feels too quiet, too watchful. Somewhere out there, someone is looking back at them through a rifle sight, measuring their skills, judging their mistakes. This is the story of the night trackers of the Australian SAS, the ones the Viet Cong's elite reconnaissance feared most. Night in Phuoc Tuy province is not darkness, it is layers. A low, heavy canopy traps heat and smoke. Above that, taller trees reach again, overlapping their crowns into a second roof. Vines hang down like ropes. Bamboo thickets knot themselves into walls. Small clearings appear suddenly and then vanish behind you. Moonlight rarely reaches the ground clean. It filters through leaf and vine, shattered into fragments. Silver pools slide across the jungle as clouds move. A spider web flashes once and is gone. A wet trunk gleams and then sinks back into shadow. The air is thick enough to feel. Humidity clings to skin and fabric. Nothing ever truly dries. Shirts, webbing, boots, always damp, always soft. The smell is a constant mix of rot and life. Wet earth, crushed leaves, stagnant puddles, the sweet-sour scent of decaying vegetation. The jungle never shuts up. Frogs call from unseen pools. Cicadas buzz, rising and falling in waves. Nightbirds call sharply, then fall silent. Sometimes monkeys move overhead, shaking branches, dropping debris. Every noise forms part of a pattern the trained ear learns to read. For most soldiers, this is just background. For trackers, it is a second language. Sound behaves strangely here. A whispered word can carry 50 meters. A careless cough can travel 100. A boot on dry twig can sound like a rifle crack. Meanwhile, a whole patrol can move unseen just beyond a thin screen of foliage. Light is dangerous. A single naked torch can splash light onto low cloud, revealing a position to distant eyes. The glowing end of a cigarette, seen from the flank, becomes a target. Cooking smoke hangs under the canopy like a curtain, visible from high ground. The ground itself is a book. On the valley floors, red clay holds prints for days. On ridgelines, coarse sand and pebble take only the deepest marks. Under big trees, mats of leaf litter can hide everything, except the subtle twist where a boot has turned. To the untrained, it is chaos. To the men who will fight this silent war, the chaos has rules. The SAS patrols learn to use the jungle as a shield, a hiding place, a listening post. They move with it, not against it. They learn which plants squeak when brushed, which branches snap easily, which vines cling and betray movement. The Viet Cong counter-trackers view the same terrain with different eyes. To them, the jungle is an ally, a witness. It records every careless step made by foreign troops, amplifies their smell, carries their sounds. This battlefield is not just a place. It is a living, breathing presence, one that punishes haste, rewards patience, and shows no loyalty to either side. When main force units enter this world, they enter like ships into a storm. American infantry companies deploy on search and destroy operations with confidence built around firepower. Platoons spread in long lines. Radios crackle. M60 machine guns hang heavy in the hands of gunners. Above, helicopters move like sharks, orbiting, ready to drop more men or tear gaps in the trees with rockets and miniguns. The theory is simple: find, fix, finish. But the jungle is not a flat battlefield. It is depth, cover, concealment, noise. Large formations leave scars. Broken branches, trampled undergrowth, deep churned mud around rest halts, the bitter smell of cigarette smoke, the sharp artificial scent of fuel and lubricants. Viet Cong lookouts, posted along likely avenues of approach, can detect such forces long before there is any risk of contact. South Vietnamese regular units move differently. Smaller, sometimes lighter. Their soldiers often know the local terrain, the villages, the paths. But resource limits and training gaps mean they too tend to travel in groups large enough to be heard and tracked. Australian infantry battalions bring their own doctrine. They patrol more, move cautiously, use smaller company-level operations to dominate sectors. Their discipline in the bush is better than most. Even so, a company or platoon still has a footprint, a sound, a smell. The SAS does not fight like this. Their job is not to sweep, not to clear, not to hold. Their job is to know. Small patrols, 4, sometimes 6 men, move alone, deep into areas where the enemy believes he is safe. No banners, no flags, no visible front line. Just a handful of soldiers with everything they need on their backs, stepping into a world where help may be hours or days away. They do not go looking for firefights. They go looking for patterns. Where does the enemy move? Where does he sleep? Where does he store rice, ammunition, weapons? Which tracks carry daily traffic, and which are reserved for special missions? They report. Then the firepower of others comes crashing down. Artillery, airstrikes, battalion sweeps. The Viet Cong quickly learn that whenever they move in certain regions, invisible eyes may be watching. To attack those eyes, they form their own small teams, skilled, carefully selected men, hunters of hunters. On one side, foreign special forces, quiet and methodical. On the other, local guerrilla specialists who consider the jungle their inheritance. The clash will not come in open clearings with flares and tracers. It will come in the space between one footprint and the next. The story of these Australian patrols begins long before Vietnam. In 1957, the Australian Army raised the Special Air Service Company, later a regiment, drawing on the traditions of the British SAS of North Africa and Europe. Their task? Long-range reconnaissance, raiding, and deep penetration behind enemy lines. But the Australian variant grows up in a different environment. Their early campaigns are in Malaya and Borneo, dense, humid jungle against communist insurgents. Here they learn that success is measured not in captured ground, but in captured information. Small teams move for days, living off what they can carry, supported only by distant radio. They work alongside indigenous trackers and experienced bushmen. Aboriginal and islander soldiers bring skills honed over generations, reading the ground, sensing changes in the bush, moving silently in thick vegetation. From these experiences, a specific doctrine evolves. Selection is ruthless. Physical fitness is only the entry ticket. The real test is mental. Who can stay alert on day 8 when boots are rotting and tempers are short? Who can stay calm when the patrol is lost in mist and the map no longer matches the ground? Who can think clearly when there is no one to call, no larger unit just over the hill? Tracking becomes both a science and an art. Men learn to see more than prints. They are taught to notice the direction of bent grass, the freshness of a cut vine, the way a droplet of water clings to a moved leaf. They practice counter-tracking, moving in ways that leave as little sign as possible, confusing the mental picture of any enemy reading their trail. By the time the first SAS squadron deploys to Vietnam in 1966, these skills are no longer experimental. They are part of the unit's identity. The Viet Cong, too, come from a long lineage of jungle fighters. Many of their senior men first fought the French. Some learned from fathers who had resisted the Japanese. They know these hills and valleys not as coordinates, but as childhood landscapes. They navigate by star gaps in the canopy, the taste of stream water, the smell of certain trees. Their tracking skills grow out of necessity. Against better-armed foreign armies, they rely on early warning. A good tracker can give a guerrilla unit hours of notice, turning ambushes into victories and avoiding disaster. When reports begin to filter in about strange, small enemy patrols, foreign soldiers who move like locals, who appear and vanish without warning, commanders in the provincial and district structures take note. They order the formation of specialized counter-tracking teams. These are not ordinary fighters. They are chosen for patience, eyesight, and memory. Men who enjoy the discipline of reading the ground. Men who can walk behind a patrol all day, unseen, building a picture from disturbed soil and displaced leaves. In this way, two lines of tradition meet under the canopy of Phuoc Tuy. On one side, SAS patrols carrying the combined lessons of Malaya, Borneo, and Australian bushcraft. On the other, Viet Cong trackers shaped by decades of local war, convinced that no foreigner can truly match their understanding of the jungle. Neither side underestimates the other for long.
You move in third position. Point man in front, silent, focused, weapon held high, eyes scanning the foliage. Behind him, the patrol commander with the radio antenna bent low along his pack to avoid catching on branches. You carry no special badge, no rank on your sleeves that says tracker, but everyone in the patrol knows that your eyes are one of their best weapons. The air feels like warm, wet cloth pressed against your face. Your shirt sticks to your back. Your sleeves cling to your forearms. Your socks have been damp for days. Somewhere inside your boots, your feet are turning soft and white. Every step is a decision. Your heel never comes down hard. You feel for roots, rocks, firm patches. When you have to step in mud, you spread your weight, roll your foot in, leave as little clear definition as possible. You avoid low, dead sticks that might snap. You gently ease vines aside, then let them fall back into place instead of ripping them free. Your eyes flicker constantly. Down to the ground for a heartbeat, up to chest height, out to the flanks, ahead where the point man is choosing the route, back along the line of march to see how each man is placing his boots. You listen to the jungle. It has a normal pattern now. Insects buzzing at a steady, irritating pitch. Birds calling, moving, scolding. Farther away, the dull thud of artillery from some distant fire support base. If the pattern changes, you will notice. The patrol halts. A raised fist, passed back by hand signal. You ease into a crouch behind a tree, rifle up, eyes still working. The point man has seen something. For long seconds, nothing moves. You hear your own breathing, the slow drip of water from high leaves, a mosquito's thin whine at your ear. The commander crawls forward. They confer with gestures and whispers. You are called up. You slide beside the point man. He points with his lips, not his finger. At first, you see nothing. Then you notice a cluster of leaves ahead, one corner turned the wrong way up, pale underside flashing slightly in the gloom. Beneath it, at the edge of a faint pad, a partial sandal print. Half of it caught in soft ground, the rest on a root. The front edge is sharp, not rounded by time. A single bead of water has collected in the deepest part. You feel your pulse tick up. The track leads across your line of advance. The men who left it are close, hours, not days. You map it in your head, direction, weight, pace. You check around. There are more prints, 3, 4, maybe 5 sets, all sandals, all moving steadily. No sign of a heavy machine gun or mortars. A patrol, not a big unit. You slide back to the commander and whisper your estimate. He nods once. The patrol shifts course. You are no longer just moving, you are stalking, parallel to the enemy's route, keeping distance, staying downwind, watching for a chance to get eyes on without being seen. Later that day, you find another sign, this time on your own track. Just behind one of your boot prints, a faint crescent where a bare heel pressed down, tested the ground, then lifted. The Vietnamese are on your trail. The duel has begun. You say nothing at first. You look again, harder. You find a second mark, then a third, always overlapping or just touching your own prints. You tell the commander quietly. You see the flicker in his eyes. No panic, just the tightening of focus. From now on, every step you take will be written for someone else to read.
Late 1967, Phuoc Tuy province. An SAS patrol is tasked with a simple order phrased in complex terms. Confirm the existence and activity level of an enemy base area suspected near the Song Rai, grid reference. 5 men board a helicopter at Nui Det in the gray light before dawn. Their faces are already darkened with camouflage. Packs are heavy with rations, ammunition, radios, batteries, claymores. They say little. Each knows his part. Insertion is quick. The Huey drops to treetop level over a clearing barely large enough to hold its rotor disc. The men jump, almost before the skids touch. The helicopter lifts and is gone, the sound rolling away across the jungle. Silence closes in. For the first hour, the patrol moves with extra care. Fresh dropped men make noise until the rhythm returns. They leave no obvious path from the landing site. They circle, cut their own sign, enter the area of interest not along straight lines, but in curves and loops. By late morning on the second day, the tracker begins to find what they came for. First, a used cook site. The ash is gray-white, still loose to the touch. Short bamboo stakes around it, used to hold pots. Small fish bones. A scrap of rice husk. Then sandal prints along a narrow pad. Several sizes, mixed with bare feet. Civilians and soldiers using the same route. The patrol moves parallel, never walking directly in the enemy's steps. Finally, from a ridge above the river, they see it. Through gaps in the foliage, across a bend in the Song Rai, a cluster of thatched structures lies half-hidden, some raised on stilts, some dug into the earth with overhead cover. 2 fighting bunkers, a camouflaged radio aerial barely visible against the trees. They settle in to watch. Observation post disciplines take over. 1 man always awake, eyes on the objective. Others rest in short spells, boots off when possible to vent their skin. When they move within their own perimeter, they do so on hands and knees, carefully brushing away any sign afterwards. Through binoculars, they count. Groups of men enter and leave. Weapons are stacked. A machine gun is cleaned. Rice sacks are unloaded from boats that come gliding along the river, hulls blending into reflected green. Twice, enemy trackers appear at the base perimeter. They move with the same slow patience the SAS know so well. 1 points upriver, roughly toward the Australians' approach route. There is unease in the body language, even from this distance. At night, the patrol transmits in short, clipped sentences. Everything is pre-coded. Coordinates, estimates, patterns. No flourishes, no opinions. Just data. They do this for 2 nights and a day, never detected. And then, just before dawn on the 3rd morning, the sky to the east flickers. Artillery shells from Nui Det begin to land. First, ranging shots. Then, full fire for effect. The jungle around the base erupts. Trees shatter, bunkers collapse. The shock waves even roll through the patrol's concealed position. They do not cheer. Their job was not to kill. It was to point. The killing belongs to battery crews who have never seen the men they are firing at. Later, when infantry units move through the shattered remains of the base, they find bodies, broken equipment, weapons twisted by blast. In a half-buried dugout, an officer's map case survives. Inside is a damp report that mentions enemy reconnaissance teams very small in number but keen of eye, dangerous in effect beyond their size. The watchers on the Song Rai never meet the men who wrote that line, but the duel has entered the enemy's paperwork. For a unit built around stealth, the most dangerous weapon is not the rifle. It is the decision to use it. A shot is more than noise. It is revelation. It tells the enemy something critical, where you are. From that, a skilled opponent can begin to infer where you came from, where you might go, what your mission might be, especially if he has trackers who can reach the ground before rain or time smudge the story. SAS doctrine in Vietnam leans heavily toward this idea. Information is more valuable than immediate, local kills. A patrol that remains undetected for 10 days, feeding back coordinates of camps, supply caches, and movement routes can shape battalion operations, artillery programs, air support. A patrol that makes contact on day 2, however successful in the moment, has surrendered its greatest advantage. Fire discipline is therefore taught not as simple restraint, but as an extension of tracking logic. Every bullet you fire will leave brass, possibly a trail of blood, maybe a body. Every body will be examined by the enemy, not just for identity and equipment, but for direction of fire, type of weapon, angle of fall. The SAS tracker learns to think like his opposite. If we shoot here, what will they read? If we leave now along this line, where will they expect us to go? If we take documents, how long before they realize what was taken, and what will they guess from that? This does not mean they avoid fighting. When contact is forced, it is sudden and brutally efficient. Claymores, detonated at exactly the right moment, cut down men in kill zones that have been measured and rehearsed in the mind. Short, controlled bursts follow, just long enough to break any surviving resistance and cover withdrawal. Then, the second layer of discipline begins. They may drag a body a few meters to mask the exact origin of fire. They may deliberately disturb a larger area of ground, seeding it with false signs to confuse enemy trackers. They will break contact along a route chosen not just for speed, but for its potential to clean their trail, streams, rocky spurs, hardpan. At times, they will choose not to ambush at all. A tempting target passes within range, a dozen armed men, possibly more just behind. The patrol commander weighs the immediate gain, some enemy dead, captured weapons, against the long-term cost, exposure, pursuit, the loss of their ability to keep observing. Often, the decision is made in seconds. Let them go. For a young soldier, that can be the hardest order to obey. Your instincts scream to act. You see your comrades back at Nui Dat, the men who have been hit by mines or rockets, and you want to repay that debt. You feel your finger curl slightly on the trigger, but you hold. Because you know that a single, clean transmission in the night, sending a grid reference and a strength estimate, can bring down more fire than your patrol could ever deliver on its own. Silence in this philosophy is not passivity. It is a weapon.
Thick jungle north of the Nui Dat base. An SAS patrol has been out for 5 days. They have already observed one small base area, called artillery on a river crossing, and watched a supply column break apart under shrapnel. Now the jungle is talking back. The tracker begins to see their own story being overwritten. Along the line of their march from 2 days earlier, sandal marks appear, first one, then 2 sets. At points where the patrol paused briefly, the enemy prints cluster. Here, a tracker knelt to examine a boot scuff. There, a man turned in place, his toes digging slightly into the damp earth. Someone is reading. By mid-morning, the signs grow fresher. The pattern grows more hurried. Stride lengthens, spacing changes. The enemy trackers are closing, urged on by officers behind them, perhaps promised the prestige that would come from killing one of these elusive patrols. The Australian commander knows the dangers of a running fight. A small patrol cannot afford to be harried into exhaustion. So he makes a decision. He will not simply evade, he will kill the men hunting them. The tracker selects ground for the engagement as carefully as he would choose a campsite. A narrow saddle between two low knolls offers natural funnels. Thick bamboo on the flanks forces movement onto a faint animal pad that threads through the center. There is cover on the slope above, with a view down into the likely path of any pursuers. The patrol moves through, leaving a clean, readable trail. Deep enough prints to catch the eye. A broken twig placed where a tracker's gaze will naturally fall. Then they step off the pad and loop back in a wide circle, climbing to the chosen ambush positions. Claymore mines go in first, their front faces angled 3 to 5 meters above ground level, aimed to catch standing men. Wires snake back, hidden under leaves and soil, to the firing point behind a thick log. Rifles are positioned, sectors of fire assigned in whispers. Then they wait. Time stretches. Insects crawl over the exposed backs of hands. Sweat runs into eyes and is ignored. A leech slowly engorges itself on an ankle. No one moves to dislodge it. Eventually they hear them. The faint swish of brush, a careful foot on loose rock. Low voices, more felt than heard. Through the foliage, the Australians see them come into view. 5 Viet Cong, spread along the pad. The lead man moves in the classic tracker's crouch, eyes sweeping the ground, weapon ready but slightly lowered. The second man watches the flanks. The others follow, tense, focused. The lead tracker slows at a patch of disturbed soil where the patrol's prints are especially clear. He frowns, senses something. His head begins to lift. The patrol commander squeezes the clacker. The twin claymores detonate, their blast flattened and thrown forward by the curved charges. Hundreds of steel balls scythe into the kill zone. The air becomes dust, foliage, blood, shredded cloth. The Australian rifles speak next. Short bursts, no shouting, no wasted rounds. In less than 10 seconds, it is over. The patrol moves swiftly down into the wrecked trail. 3 trackers lie dead where they stood. One gasps on the ground, hit badly. Another, further back, lies still, thrown against a tree. They search quickly. Maps, hand-drawn sketches of suspected SAS patrol zones. A folded, greasy set of orders instructing the team to locate and intercept foreign reconnaissance elements before they can guide artillery. Notes on boot patterns, ration tins, even the odor of insect repellent used by Allied forces. The dying tracker is stabilized as best as possible and later evacuated, his knowledge a valuable source for intelligence officers. When he is questioned, he speaks with a mixture of bitterness and reluctant respect. He says, "We followed your steps, but you always knew. It was like you were walking ahead of our thoughts. We thought we were the hunters, then suddenly we were in your sights." For the SAS patrol, the success is professional, not personal. They have removed eyes from the enemy's face. For a while, the trails in this sector will be watched, but not as closely. The duel has swung their way, for now.
No unit wins every round. Mid-1969, another SAS patrol deep in enemy territory. A routine movement from one observation position to a new one, chosen to cover a suspected supply route. The men are tired but functioning. The jungle is its usual oppressive self. Then, bad luck chooses a moment. The second man in the file steps on to what he thinks is firm ground. The earth collapses beneath his weight. He drops waist-deep into a concealed pit. The stakes at the bottom have rotted just enough not to kill him outright. They snap with a loud, ugly cracking sound. His legs are cut, but not badly. The real damage is to the control's invisibility. In that instance, quiet dies. The point man drops into cover, weapon up, listening. The others flatten behind whatever trees and logs they can find. The trapped man is hauled out, teeth clenched to hold back a shout as his torn skin scrapes against rough soil. For a few seconds, the jungle holds its breath. Then, from somewhere to their right, a whistle blows. Short, sharp blasts, echoed by another whistle farther away. The patrol commander does not hesitate. They will not stay and wait for the trap to close. They move. Not in a panicked rush, but in a rapid, controlled withdrawal along a pre-planned axis. Spacing increases. Each man maintains his own arc. The tracker reads the ground ahead at speed now, selecting routes that will both carry them away and complicate any pursuit. They plunge into a shallow creek, water up to their thighs. The noise is unavoidable, but the water will blur their sign. Downstream, left at a bend, up a rocky spur where boots leave only faint scuffs on stone. Through a stand of tall grass, careful not to leave obvious tunnels. Behind them, the jungle comes alive with enemy movement. Shouted orders, the cracking of undergrowth, occasional single shots probing the trees. The Viet Cong have their own trackers on the case. They find the collapsed pit easily. They see the blood on broken stakes. They follow the churned mud to the creek. There, they slow, reading each ripple, each muddy print on the bank. The SAS patrol hears them closing. The sounds become distinct. A cough, a clatter of metal on metal, the harsh hiss of someone being told to be quiet. The Australians cannot outrun this forever. So the commander chooses a different sort of fight. He selects a tight, overgrown hollow in the roots of a massive tree. The foliage dips low, forming a natural canopy. Vines hang down, breaking up shapes. The ground is soft enough to lie in, but firm enough not to squelch loudly. They slide in. 4 men become part of the terrain. Leaves are arranged over faces, helmets, weapons. Safety catches are checked. Fingers find triggers and stay there. They do not plan an ambush this time. They plan to disappear. The Viet Cong searchline passes close, so close that one Australian can see the stitching on a man's webbing through a tiny gap in the leaves. A tracker stops. For a long, long moment, he stares directly at the hollow where the SAS lie. His gaze moves from right to left, scanning. One of the Australians feels sweat trickling down the bridge of his nose, pooling on his upper lip. An ant crawls across his cheek and bites. He does not move. Breaths are taken through the nose, slow and controlled. Hearts hammer, but that sound is private. Finally, the tracker's eyes move on. He takes a step. Another. The searchline shifts, their focus moving downslope. For hours, the enemy combs the area. Occasional bursts of fire cut through the undergrowth at suspected hiding places. Grenades explode in depressions, filling the air with the sharp smell of explosives and torn vegetation. The SAS stay still. Only when the sounds have faded for a long time do they dare to move. Even then, they do so in inches, not meters. 1 man at a time, resetting camouflage as they go. They do not head straight for extraction. They circle, loop back into areas they know are less likely to be double-searched. Only after darkness falls do they make their way slowly toward a pickup point. Later, a fragment of enemy report will say simply, "Enemy reconnaissance group detected by minefield. Pursuit unsuccessful due to loss of sign in rocky terrain." On paper, it is a failure of tracking. in the minds of the men who spent that afternoon lying meters from unseen rifles, it is survival by inches and discipline. The duel on this day ends in a draw.
Fear in war rarely announces itself. It seeps. At first, reports about the Australian SAS are scattered. Small foreign patrol observed at distance. Enemy reconnaissance element believed present in area. Tracks of boots not matching US or ARVN pattern discovered. Then they grow more urgent. Ambush of supply party by small enemy group, no warning given. Artillery strike followed rapid movement of unknown reconnaissance unit in sector. Within the Viet Cong intelligence structure, patterns begin to emerge. These Australians do not move like Americans. They are fewer, quieter. They often appear where they are least expected, along minor tracks, at hidden river crossings, near rear area camps assumed to be safe. Captured documents over time reflect a shift in tone. Early on, the language is confident. Tracking teams will locate and destroy these units. By understanding their routes, we will lay successful counterambushes. Later, frustration creeps in. Our trackers report difficulty reading their sign. They use watercourses and rocky ground to hide their movement. They double back. They spread out. They do not leave trash. In some reports, the respect is almost grudging admiration. These enemy forces show good discipline. They do not smoke. They do not make noise. Their ambushes are carefully prepared and executed with precision. Among ordinary fighters, stories circulate of patrols that walk into sudden walls of fire with no prior sound or warning, of bases shelled just days after unknown footprints were found nearby, of comrades hit by shots that seemed to come from nowhere and then nothing. No follow-up, no shouted commands. Just silence. Some call them ghosts. Others use phrases like black-clad phantoms. The idea takes hold that the Australians see everything. This is not true, of course. No unit sees everything. No patrol is perfect. But perception matters. If a VC platoon commander believes he is being watched, he alters his plans. He delays movement, doubles sentries, routes his men along more difficult paths that cost time and energy. He may cancel an operation entirely if reports of SAS activity come in. In this way, the night trackers exert an influence far beyond the few hills and valleys their boots actually touch. Their duel with enemy trackers extends into the mental terrain, the space where decisions are made, risks assessed. Bravery flickers against caution. When even the best Viet Cong trackers start to admit, privately or in reports, that these Australians write on the ground almost as we do, a line has been crossed. The jungle is no longer exclusively their home ground.
Numbers in this kind of war are always approximate, but they have weight. Between 1966 and 1971, 3 squadrons of the Australian SAS rotate through Vietnam. At any given time, the number of SAS soldiers actually forward in the jungle is small. A handful of patrols, perhaps 20 to 30 men spread over a whole province. Yet their patrol logs fill folders. Hundreds upon hundreds of missions, long-range reconnaissance, ambushes, standing patrols near key tracks and river crossings, damage assessment after artillery strikes. Enemy casualties directly inflicted by SAS patrols measure in the hundreds. The number of men killed or disrupted because of artillery and air strikes they guided is many times that. SAS losses in combat are remarkably low by comparison. Only a small number of men are killed in action during the entire deployment. Many more experience near misses, rounds cracking overhead, mortars falling close, patrols almost overrun. Kill ratios, while never the full measure of effectiveness, tell a stark story. A tiny unit punching far above its weight.
The enemy's losses are harder to quantify. Bodies removed, wounded carried away, men who stagger off and die later under trees. But captured documents and prisoner interrogations frequently mention the impact of small Australian reconnaissance parties on ambushes, supply movement, and morale. What numbers cannot show is the area denial effect. Every trail avoided because of a rumor. Every meeting moved because SAS may be in that sector. Every cache left unused for a month because foreign footprints were seen nearby. A tracker's work leaves no tallies on a blackboard, only shifting choices in the minds of men he will never meet. In the mathematics of this shadow war, the night trackers are a multiplier, not a simple addition.
All of this has a price. You do not move through the jungle for weeks at a time without paying in skin and nerves. Heat rash blooms under webbing. Tropical ulcers open on shins and refuse to heal. Leech bites leave small, constantly itching wounds that can become infected. Feet, soaked day after day, soften and crack. Sleep is taken in fragments, 20 minutes here, an hour there, never without someone awake, never deep enough to escape the awareness that a misplaced print or a missed sign could mean death for the whole patrol. For the tracker, the mental strain is special. Your brain is always on. Even in the half-doze of a rest halt, part of you is replaying the morning's ground, that odd rock that looked, shifted, the way the birds fell silent behind you for a moment, the faint whiff of smoke you weren't sure was memory or reality. You learn to doubt yourself, but you also learn to act when it matters. Trust inside a patrol crystallizes under this pressure. 4 or 5 men living in a bubble of shared risk. You know how each one breathes when he's calm, how his voice changes when he's worried, how he moves when he's tired. Small arguments flare and die, smothered by the knowledge that tomorrow you may be lying in the same hollow while enemy boots pass meters away. There is humor, but it is quiet. A muttered comment as you all pour water out of boots. A shared look when the same leech seems to have found the same patch of skin 3 nights running. Fear is there too. Not the cinematic fear of screaming charges, but a thin, constant wire humming under the skin. You fear making the mistake that lets the enemy trackers in. You fear hearing the first, unmistakable sound of a claymore being triggered somewhere along your route, but not by you. On the other side, Viet Cong trackers carry their own burden. Theirs is a prideful craft. To lose a trail is to feel you have failed your unit. To follow an SAS patrol for hours and then walk into an ambush, as many did, is to realize that the enemy has read your habits as clearly as you read his. Some grow cautious, others grow reckless, trying to prove themselves against this foreign challenge. More than a few die doing so. Years later, veterans on both sides will talk about each other without hatred. They remember the tension, the near encounters, the sense of playing deadly chess in a jungle that sometimes seemed to favor one side, then the other, but always watched without comment. The brotherhood that forms in such conditions is complex. It is strongest within patrols, but it extends outward, in a strange way, to the men on the other side who shared the same habits, crouching over prints at dawn, feeling soil with calloused fingers, reading what others walked past. In a war of ideology, they belonged to opposing causes. In the jungle, they belonged to the same small profession. When Australian SAS operations in Vietnam end in the early 1970s, the jungle does what it always does. It closes. Tracks turn back to earth. Bunkers collapse and become mounds under vines. Pits fill with leaves, then soil, then roots. Trails, once cut clean by many feet, fade to faint lines, then nothing. But the lessons remain. Within the regiment, Vietnam becomes a case study. Young troopers learn about the patrols that slipped past enemy trackers and the ones that nearly didn't. They study how to move in four-man teams, how to balance aggression with caution, how to think not just like a hunter, but like the prey they hope never to become. Training ranges in Australia host reconstructions of jungle sign. Recruits crawl over patches of ground, trying to spot what older men point to with quiet patience. A bent blade here, a faint compressions there. Modern conflicts will take SAS operators to deserts, mountains, cities, yet the principles forged in the wet heat of Phuoc Tuy remain. Read before you move. Think before you shoot. Respect the enemy's skill. Assume someone, somewhere, is watching your trail. On the Vietnamese side, survivors fold the memory of the night trackers into their own history. Some talk, years later, about the small Australian units who moved like we did. Others remember frustration more than fear, the anger of losing a trail in rocky ground, of seeing comrades cut down by sudden, precise blasts from claymores laid by unseen hands. A few express something rarer, professional respect. They were not many, one former VC cadre tells an interviewer decades later, but we always had to think about them. When we moved near Nui Dat, we were never sure if they were watching. That uncertainty is its own enemy. The jungle itself has no memory. It does not care who walked its trails with rifles and radios, who crouched over footprints with furrowed brows, who lay still while searchlines passed close enough to touch. But stories endure where foliage does not. In regimental histories, in veterans' quiet conversations, in the minds of those who try to understand how a handful of men could shape the movement of thousands. The night trackers were never the face of the war. They were its shadow. In the dripping silence of Phuoc Tuy, they turned the enemy's greatest advantage, mastery of the jungle, into a contested space. In those shadows, under that endless canopy, they became ghosts.